once thought that I would love Lu Rian deeply for a long time. However, if I hadn't seen that post by Gu Wuyan on Weibo, perhaps this love would have continued to be firm. He posted a picture of a rainy scene looking out of a car, with the caption, "After so many years, you're still the only one willing to wait for me to get off work for 3 hours." The post was on my birthday, and on that day I waited for Lu Rian at home for a full 3 hours, knowing that Lu Rian loved Gu Wuyan. It wasn't just me who knew, it seemed as if the whole world knew. They had been in love passionately for 4 years. If Gu Wuyan hadn't gone abroad to study when they graduated, perhaps they would never have broken up at all, and no one except the two of us would have known that Lu Rian and I were together. Because I loved her too much, I foolishly thought that I could wait until the moment when the clouds dispersed and the moon was bright, wait until the big tree in Lu Rian's heart, every leaf that grew was deeply engraved with my name. It wasn't until I saw that Weibo post that I realized I couldn't wait any longer, because in Lu Rian's heart has never planted any seeds about me. Just as I was in a daze, the sound of the door opening suddenly rang out, bringing with it a blast of cold air that immediately melted into this warm room. Lu Rian took off her coat, was stunned when she saw me, and then said, "I forgot to buy the medicine. My cold has always been hard to bear, and I always have to rely on medicine to get through it. This afternoon I was in so much pain that I couldn't even walk, but the medicine at home was gone, so I had to lie in bed and ask Lu Rian to bring a box of medicine home. If it were any other time I would probably understand it very well, nod my head, and even say it's okay, after all you're busy with work. But now I suddenly found that I didn't want to make excuses for him anymore. I was thinking, if the person lying on the bed with so much pain all over his body was Gu Wuyan, would he still take it so lightly? No, he just doesn't love me, and all his excuses are self-indulgent. In fact, I already knew the answer. I didn't say anything, stood up and walked to the door alone. The moment I passed by Lu Rian, I really want to tell him that I really hope I am just being unreasonable. I really hope that we can be like an ordinary couple who will quarrel and make up, but I know that this is not the case because I sadly discovered that I don't even have a trace of sadness. I just want to go past him and buy a box of medicine. I want to say that if you are not willing to care about me, then at least I have to be responsible for my own body. The moment the door was closed, the cold air rushed into my nasal cavity, which made me sober up all of a sudden. I suddenly thought that I didn't seem to love Lu Rian anymore. The pharmacy downstairs is open 24 hours a day, but when I approached, I found that the lights were already dim. This world seems not very sincere. Even a store that promises to be open 24 hours a day can turn off the lights in the middle of the night. How can I blame Lu Rian for not loving me? What's more, he never promised me anything. The plastic bag in his hand clearly only contained a box of ibuprofen, but I was holding it in my hand, but it felt extremely heavy. I exhaled, and the breath slowly dissipated in the air in the ice and snow. It was so cold. Suddenly, I saw a figure leaning against the door. Lu Rian was not wearing a coat, but only a black high-necked cashmere sweater with her hands clasped. She looked at me in a daze, then lowered her head and continued to walk into the community. Suddenly, a hand reached out and took the plastic bag in my hand. He handed the plastic bag to the other hand and held me with his left hand. Why is it so cold? The warm feeling came from my right hand. Lu Rian held my hand, her hand was very soft, and at that moment I suddenly felt a sore nose, because I found that I couldn't even remember when was the last time I held hands with Lu Rian. She didn't want to go shopping with me. Even if we went out to eat occasionally, we always walked very fast. She didn't like the way other young couples were affectionate, so I was also sensible and didn't stick to him. Work occupied most of his life. I used to be lucky, thinking that even if he was busy, maybe he would be free when he was free. Stretching the shadows of two people, my right hand is hot and my left hand is cold. Lu Rian and I have been together for 3 years. When I was in college, Lu Rian was the dream of all the boys in the school. I will never forget the look on my face when I went on stage to speak as a representative of the freshmen. The lights in the auditorium illuminated the stage. Everyone was in darkness, and only he stood under the light. At that moment, golden light splashed and he was speechless at that time. We could be said to be the most enviable couple in the school. In his senior year, Gu Wuyan's family sent him abroad, and he broke up with me. I couldn't understand why someone would abandon such an excellent and good girl. Couldn't he see how sad Lu Rian was? But I still have to thank him. If he hadn't left so decisively and was so heartless when he broke up with Lu Rian, maybe Lu Rian wouldn't have agreed to my confession. At the moment of nodding, my hands were shaking with excitement. I thought it didn't matter if Gu Wuyan didn't love her, I would love her well, but at that time I seemed to have forgotten that one-sided feelings were never there will be no good result. Just like everyone thinks that they will be the last key to open the door, but what if I didn't confess to Lu Rian at the beginning? I have never thought about this question in the past 3 years, but what if there were people pursuing me in the school back then? Although they were not as good as Lu Rian, they fell in love with each other over time. Maybe one day I would also like them and fall in love with each other. We would also be like an ordinary couple, loving each other ordinarily. If I could. I sat up suddenly and touched the sweat on my forehead. I had a nightmare. It was rare for Lu Rian to be at home at this time. She also sat up and turned her head to look at me with a worried look on her face. I met her gaze, nodded, and then shook my head hesitantly. Lu Rian pulled open the quilt and said, "I'll make you breakfast." "No need." I called her, "There is toast in the kitchen." Lu Rian turned her head and seemed a little surprised. It was then that I realized that Lu Rian had never cooked a meal for me, but today I refused. I looked at Lu Rian and was wondering if are you going to be angry? But the next second I saw Lu Rian's smiling face. "Since you want to eat, then eat toast." Lu Rian came out of the kitchen at the dining table and handed me a bottle of milk. "Drink this." I reached out to take it and picked up a piece of nut from the side. Lu Rian was stunned and said, "Aren't you allergic to nuts?" I raised my eyelids and looked at him. The one who is allergic to nuts is Gu Wuyan. You remembered the wrong name. The moment I said it, the air seemed to freeze. Lu Ruyan retracted her smile at a speed visible to the naked eye. He frowned, and a slightly angry expression appeared on his face. Why did you mention him? I looked at him, and the emotions that suddenly surged up suddenly made me sad. I felt so powerless. I didn't want to say anything anymore. It's nothing. I said the wrong thing. Lu Ruyan seemed to have not expected that I would skip this topic so quickly. She leaned back in her chair, made a harsh sound on the floor, and then stood up and said, I'm full, you eat it. As the door was closed, I smiled bitterly and looked at the bottle of milk at hand. Lu Ruyan, 3 years have passed, and you still haven't remembered me. Are you lactose intolerant? Lu Ruyan and I were silent for a whole day. We stayed in the same house, but it was unusually quiet. In the evening, he put on his coat and went out. But after a while, I received a message on my phone saying that I had something to do tonight and would not eat. I only glanced at it and turned off the screen. A feeling of suffocation and difficulty breathing came over me again. I roughly knew what it was. After all, Gu Wuyan had just sent a message saying that he had to work overtime in the evening. Mobwa and the others could go out for dinner together. Lu Ruyan was waiting for him downstairs after get off work. At night, would Lu Ruyan come back at night? I took a deep breath, took the key and went out. Winter was not over yet. The air was astringent and cold. The leaves on the trees were all gone, but it hadn't snowed yet. I walked aimlessly. It was obviously time for dinner, but I still didn't feel a little hungry. I wondered what Lu Ruyan and Gu Wuyan were doing at this time. They should have just finished their meal. In the past, when Lu Ruyan and I went out to eat, I liked hot pot and barbecue. However, Lu Ruyan always sneered at these oily and spicy things. If it was Gu Wuyan, he would be willing to accompany her to eat everything she wanted to eat. I could not see through it in the past. In fact, the love for so many years has long become a kind of obsession and unwillingness. Whenever Lu Ruyan and I are together, I will think of Lu Ruyan and Gu Wuyan. If Gu Wuyan is the rose in Lu Ruyan's heart, then he is the thorn that is deeply pierced into my heart. In the past 3 years, those thorns have become deeper and deeper until I completely understand. As I walked, I passed by a bar. The voice of the resident singer floated out from the open door, like a ghost. I walked in. There were not many people in the bar, probably because it was still early. The singer sat on the stage holding his guitar and tuning his head, occasionally singing a few words. I went to the bar and asked for a glass of sweet wine. I sat at a distance and squinted at the stage. The lights were dim, making it difficult to see the faces of the people around me. After drinking a glass of wine, my face started to get hot. I knew I couldn't drink much, so I finished that glass and walked out the door. When I went out, the night got darker and the weather got colder. I shivered and was about to take out my phone to call a taxi, but I couldn't find my phone after searching my pockets. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind me, Dada. I followed it and said, Dada was my nickname in high school. At that time, my face was round and often red, so my high school classmates gave me this nickname. I turned around and saw a man running towards me. I squinted my eyes and saw the figure. I could tell from his clothes that it was the resident singer who had just sat on the stage. I stood there waiting for him and ran into his mouth to exhale hot air. After finally catching my breath, he stuffed the phone into my hand. After so many years, how could you still be so careless? I looked at my phone and looked up at the confusion he expressed with his eyes. He seemed to raise his eyebrows in surprise. Do you remember me? I am Shen Yue. How could I not remember Shen Yue? I was my desk mate in high school. I liked singing, sleeping in, and asking me to copy my homework during morning self-study. The teacher always turned a blind eye to his behavior. After all, Shen Yue's life can be written with an article about my father, the district head. At that time, everyone thought he would have a smooth life. In his senior year of high school, he clamored to play music, broke up with her family in a rage, ran away, dropped out of school and disappeared. He looked at my expression and smiled. How about you remember it? I nodded, pulled the scarf up again, covered my chin. Long time no see. Do you work here? Shen Yue shook her head. My friend's bar singer took a temporary leave and asked me to help. I nodded but didn't know what to say the next second. I have met many classmates in the process of growing up. They have become mature and taciturn without exception. Brothers who used to go to the toilet together arm in arm became young people who flatter each other at the drinking party. Sisters who used to listen to each other's sad stories late at night didn't even send an invitation to their wedding. People say this is normal, this is growing up, and in this normal state swept by the mainstream, it seems that only Shen Yue has been standing there. His right, he put his arm around me and said, "Come on, I'll take you home." It was as if we were back to 10 years ago when we were 16 years old. He lazily put his arm around me while I was doing my homework and said, "Come on, accompany me to the grocery store." But I nodded and said yes at that time. 10 years later, I could only try hard to think of excuses to refuse. Shen Yue saw my hesitation, and her smile suddenly became cunning. "Okay, look at how red your face has become. The good student back then has become a bad student." Her face, which was originally red from the alcohol, turned even redder. Without waiting for me to speak, Shen Yue took out a pair of car keys and said, "I'll drive, you wait here." Soon a Mercedes-Benz drove up in front of us. Shen Yue rolled down the window and shouted to me, "Come up." Maybe it was because the current Shen Yue reminded me of myself back then, and my nervousness disappeared a little. I found a topic to talk about and said, "Where did you go later? What happened back then?" He left without saying goodbye. Shen Yue pursed her lips. Didn't he have a falling out with his family? So he went to Beijing alone to sign a contract with a company. The company funded me to study abroad in a music school. I said, "Oh, then this company is pretty good." Who would have thought that Shen Yue turned her head and glanced at me, and burst out laughing. How could such a good thing fall from the sky? Later I found out that it was my mother who couldn't bear to see me suffer, so she contacted the record company and arranged it for me. I said, "Oh," again, and the car fell into silence. When passing the traffic light, the car stopped. Shin Yue suddenly gripped the steering wheel tighter. In fact, it was not considered leaving without saying goodbye. I was stunned. Shin Yue suddenly raised the corners of his mouth, revealing his sharp fangs like small beasts. I looked for you in my memory and climbed over the wall. You were in physical education class at the time. I took a look and left. His eyes were staring straight at me, which made me I felt helpless for a while, but in the end I still attributed it to my reluctance to part with my good friend, so I said thank you. The car stopped downstairs, and I unexpectedly found that the lights in my house were on. I looked up and saw the figure leaning against the window. Shin Yue got out of the car, and when he saw me looking up, he also looked up. I don't know if the light hurt his eyes, but he squinted and asked casually, "Your girlfriend?" I nodded and said, "Yeah." Shin Yue suddenly smiled and said, "What should I do?" I was stunned and my thoughts drifted back to 10 years ago. At that time, a girl from another class had pursued me fiercely, and breakfast love letters were delivered on time every day. In the end, they were all snatched away by Shin Yue or used as draft paper. She chewed the fried dough sticks that should have belonged to me and muttered, "What should I do? If you fall in love with him, I won't have homework to copy, right?" After eating the dough sticks, he smacked his lips and concluded, "So you are not allowed to date." I turned around and blinked at him. I couldn't figure out the inevitable relationship between dating and copying homework. Do I need your consent to date in the future? Who knows? Shin Yue put away his playful smile and nodded seriously. Yes. The tone of voice 10 years ago overlapped with the picture in front of me. I said, "Fortunately, I don't have to do homework now." Shin Yue turned her head and smiled meaningfully. "I'm leaving then." I said okay. The car gradually disappeared from my sight. I put away the smile on my face and looked upstairs again. Lu Ruyan was still leaning against the window with a frown. After receiving my gaze, she stepped back slightly, closed the curtains, went upstairs and opened the door, and I smelled a strong smell of cigarettes. Lu Ruyan had quit smoking for many years. She once said that it was because Gu Wuyan didn't like it. She started smoking again after being with me, but not as fiercely as now. Lu Ruyan sat on the sofa with bloodshot eyes. She looked at me without speaking. I was about to walk past her to the room, but Lu Ruyan suddenly called my name and dialed it herself. I turned around and looked at him expressionlessly. Probably she didn't expect me to be so cold. The words Lu Ruyan had prepared were like the words seemed to be stuck in my throat, and the anger on my face was completely swept away by his stunned gaze. He opened his mouth and said, "You're going out at night." I nodded, my hand already on the doorknob. Lu Ruyan stood up, as if a little anxious. "You would always tell me when you go out before, and at least leave a light on for me." I was silent for a moment, and finally turned around slowly, met his gaze and said, "Really? I thought you were with Gu Wuyan and would not come back tonight." Lu Ruyan stopped talking. Seeing him suddenly silent, my heart sank inch by inch. So no matter how many years I accompany him, no matter what kind of rifts appear in our relationship, as long as Gu Wuyan is mentioned, I will always be the second choice, the stale rose, the one who is abandoned. Lu Ruyan's face showed helplessness. She pinched her brows and explained that her company was far from home, and it was not safe to take a taxi at night. I looked at her, as if looking at I was wearing a moldy cotton padded jacket. The powerlessness in my heart made it impossible for me to argue with her. Arguing is something only couples in love would do. I looked at her nervous eyes and nodded casually. I understood and then closed the door. When I woke up the next day, Lu Ruyan had already left home. She didn't come back to her room all night yesterday. As the Chinese New Year was approaching, the company had a few days off. Because Lu Ruyan asked me to keep our relationship a secret, I always told my family that I was single. In previous years, my parents would always call to ask about my relationship status. Their thinking tends to be old-fashioned. They think a man should get married and have children early. But this year it was unusually quiet. I thought they had finally figured it out, until the evening when Lu Ruyan came home and urged me to change clothes and go to the restaurant. I frowned and said, "You have an appointment." Lu Ruyan's eyes dodged for a moment. I called our parents. After all, it has been 3 years, and it's time to set the wedding date. My heart skipped a beat and I had a bad feeling. My voice trembled with anger when I spoke. "You contact my parents." Lu Ruyan looked at my excited expression, closed her eyes and asked, "Are you unwilling to marry me?" I raised my head and looked at her directly, my tone firm, saying that I didn't want to. If it were in the past, I would have wanted to get the marriage certificate with Lu Ruyan on the spot and let the whole world witness my happiness. Even if it was just a few months ago, I would have done so. But now I won't because I don't want to deceive myself anymore. I know that Lu Ruyan doesn't love me, and I am not happy at all. My one-sided love is just a joke, which has aroused pity from the whole world. I looked at Lu Ruyan and didn't even understand why she became like this. She should have been the girl standing on the podium, full of vigor and vitality. Even if she didn't love me, she would respect me. It was not until I saw Lu Ruyan's panicked expression that I found my eyes sore. I had already shed tears, and I didn't know whether I was crying for her or for myself. Lu Ruyan reached out and hugged me. "I'm sorry I hit him just because I was afraid of losing you." I really was just afraid of losing you. I felt weak all over and didn't even have the strength to push him away. I felt dizzy, but there was a voice in my head saying clearly that you are not afraid because you love me. You are afraid because you are going to lose something that should have belonged to you. I forced myself to calm my wildly fluctuating emotions and said in a muffled voice that since my parents are here, we should finish the meal first. Lu Ruyan pulled me away, her eyes lit up, as if she realized that this scene was not suitable for expressing excitement. and she just said a few good words. The decoration of the hotel is very grand. It is a famous high-end restaurant in Jiangcheng. I was wearing a black suit. When Lu Ruyan was promoted to director, their company held a party, and I secretly bought this suit. I was happy to think that he would invite me, but in the end, he didn't even tell me about it. The party seemed to be held in this restaurant as well. I looked up and around and laughed at myself in my heart. I'll have dinner with your parents today. My parents will also be in Jiangcheng the day after tomorrow, so we'll have dinner together and decide on the wedding. Lu Ruyan seemed to be in a very good mood, planning our future with a smile on her face. She turned her head as if to ask for my opinion, and I saw my tired face in his eyes. Lu Ruyan was stunned for a moment, then put his hand in my arm, not knowing whether he was telling me or comforting himself. It's okay, as long as we decide on it. He pulled me and had to speed up my pace, but my heart was desolate. I no longer loved him. I knew because I had seen the way my lover looked, so I knew very well in my heart that I no longer loved him at all. I couldn't answer the high-level math questions. It's over, but youth will end. In the magnificent city, there will no longer be a sunny summer. The elevator went up to the 12th floor. As soon as I walked out of the elevator, Lu Ruyan's phone rang. I took a look, clenched my heart and suddenly let it go, as if it was a dangerous building. You are afraid that it will fall, and you are also afraid that it will not fall. On the day when it really falls, you will also be relieved. Lu Ruyan frowned and pressed the hang-up button. I looked at him in surprise, but Lu Ruyan seemed not to feel it and continued to walk forward. After a few steps, the phone rang again. Lu Ruyan turned her head and looked at me with uneasy eyes. I pulled the corner of my mouth. I didn't know whether the smile was sincere or not. I only heard myself say in a tired voice, "You answer it." Lu Ruyan answered the phone immediately as if she had received an order. The woman's voice came out clearly from the other end of the phone, with obvious grievances. After a few minutes, Lu Ruyan hung up the phone with an embarrassed look on her face. Something happened to Gu Wuyan. I didn't think about it and went straight to her words. "You go." Lu Ruyan was stunned, probably because she didn't expect that I would hesitate for a few seconds, and said, "Are you really okay? But as for your parents," I clenched my fists, and the sharp nails pierced my palms and made them hurt. I clenched my fists and then let go. Sometimes when facing a problem, people have no choice. The so-called choice is just to give you a chance to surrender. This is my last step. Maybe Lu Ruyan, who is anxious, hasn't realized it yet, but I have to understand because I'm the one who was thrown away. It's okay, I'll take care of it. Hearing this, Lu Ruyan seemed to be completely relieved and trotted to the elevator. Even at the last second when the elevator door closed, she just lowered her head and looked at her phone without looking at me. I stood there, took a few deep breaths and wanted to sit on the sofa next to me. Yes, the next second my phone vibrated. I opened WeChat. It was a voice message from my mother. It was more than 30 seconds long. I clicked on my mother's excited voice, and it came out 122. My parents came to the hotel entrance to prepare. Where is the entrance? Old man, look at how promising our son is, working in such a big city and finding such a filial girlfriend. The voice was mixed with my father's voice, and it could be heard that he was also full of smiles. After hearing this, I finally couldn't hold it anymore. I collapsed and sat on the ground. I covered my face. Warm tears flowed into my palms. I really didn't know how I should face my parents who came all the way to Jiangcheng in such an embarrassed posture. I don't know how long they cried. I wiped my tears, propped myself up and wanted to stand up, but I stumbled and was about to fall to the ground. Suddenly a figure came out from nowhere and supported me. I turned around in a daze but unexpectedly saw a familiar face. "How come you are here?" Shen Yue frowned and looked me up and down. "We just finished a meeting. What's wrong with you?" Hearing this concern, my tears couldn't help but flow down again. I lowered my head and quickly wiped away my tears without caring about my image. "It's okay, I'm okay." Shen Yue sighed. He seemed a little annoyed. He put his hand into his black hair and rubbed it. Then he called my name very seriously. "Jiboda, you never used to be polite to me." I raised my head and saw that he hadn't spoken yet. Shen Yue spoke again as if he was afraid that I would refuse. "No matter what happens, I can help you no matter what." The golden light illuminated the room. The revolving glass on the dining table was filled with exquisite meals. Shen Yue sat next to me, picked up the wine glass, nodded slightly towards my parents and said, "Uncle, Aunt, hello, I am Shen Yue," and then drank it all in one gulp. My father is a typical small-town father. Obviously, Shen Yue's behavior just now won him a good impression. He clapped his hands and said hello several times. As for my mother, when she heard the name, she was stunned at first, and then repeated Shen Yue. I bit my lower lip and guessed that Lu Ruyan had already registered when she contacted my parents before, so she aroused their suspicion. Seeing this, Shen Yue immediately understood, and held my hand on the dining table, smiling so much that she forgot to introduce herself. "My name is Shen Yue, and I am Boda's fiancé." As soon as these words came out, they immediately attracted the attention of my parents. My mother was a little excited that you are getting married. Looking at her expression, I could only nod. My mother clapped her hands and said, "Okay, my youngest son is getting married. My father said from the side, "Look at you, don't let your daughter-in-law laugh at you, as if our son can't get a wife." But there was a smile on his face. I was a little helpless, fearing that my parents' actions would scare Shen Yue. The moment I turned my head to look at him, I happened to see his smiling face. Shen Yue seemed to be teasing intentionally. She pinched my wrist and whispered, "Xiaowei, your marriage is coming." My cheeks flushed immediately. At the dinner table, I found that no matter what topic my parents started talking about, Shen Yue could pick it up, from securities and stocks to family matters. She grasped all the measures just right. It was obvious that my parents were very satisfied with Shen Yue. My father was probably drunk, his face was red, and he talked a lot. Our Boda has had his own opinions since he was young. Once he made up his mind, he never looked back. When he said he didn't want to get married, we were both very anxious. We didn't force him, but we were afraid that he would be bullied if he was single in the future. Fortunately, he met you. Son, you have to love him well. Otherwise, when he said this, he seemed to choke up and his voice trembled. Otherwise, I won't forgive you. My mother knew that he was drunk, so she quickly pulled his arm, patted him on the back, then raised her head and said with I apologized and said that the old man likes to talk nonsense when he drinks too much. Hey, don't mind it. Hearing this, I can't help it anymore. My nose became uncontrollably sour and I secretly reached out to wipe away a tear. Shin Yue put away the expression on her face and said seriously, Uncle and Aunt, don't worry, we will be fine. I settled my parents in a nearby hotel. It was already 10 o'clock in the evening. In order to take care of them, I decided to stay in the hotel that night. The night wind was slightly cool. When I was free and saw myself in the hotel mirror, I realized how embarrassed I was. My whole face looked tired and colorless. Fortunately, my parents are old and their eyes are blurry, so they didn't notice my embarrassment. I sighed and pointed at my face. Why didn't you remind me? Shin Yue glanced at me sideways and said, What do you look like? I haven't seen it before. Then she lowered her head and counted on her fingers, as if she was counting seriously. The number of years in high school I failed the exam and burped for the whole class while crying. During the physical fitness test in my senior year of high school, I fell flat on my feet. Shin Yue, I was so angry and ashamed that I called his name. Shin Yue looked up at me and finally laughed. I looked at his laugh and my eyes seemed to be in a trance for a moment. It seemed that in the next second Shin Yue, wearing a blue and white school uniform, would show the harmonica hidden behind him and flash it in front of me. But the next question Shin Yue asked made me hesitate. His expression seemed a little cautious. What happened to you today? Did you have a fight with your girlfriend? I thought as I breathed and finally I opened my mouth. With an inaudible sigh and the pain of a blunt knife cutting deep in my heart, I smiled bitterly. I heard that her ex-boyfriend was in trouble, and I called her temporarily. Shin Yue stopped walking forward, turned around, frowned at me, and asked the sentence that I had never dared to ask. My own words, Boda, even so, why don't you call me? Is this considered breaking up with him? The streetlights are dim, stretching our shadows. I said to Shin Yue, I have been with him for 3 years, and I have paid unimaginable sunk costs. No one is a saint. There is no way to let go rationally when I know I am not loved. After cutting off all feelings with him, I will leave without any nostalgia, but not now. I met his eyes. 3 years are really too long, right? Shin Yue looked at me and was silent for a long time. Finally, he raised his hand and wiped away the tears on my face. He said yes, he said 3 years is really too long. Early the next morning my parents came and knocked on my door. I opened the door and saw big and small bags and their smiling faces. I was a little busy with your matter. My mother stepped forward. My parents have gone back. Seeing that you are living well here, we are relieved. For a moment I didn't dare to reply, because I didn't know whether Lu Rian mentioned it when she called them. Regarding meeting his parents, Mom seemed to see what I was thinking. She took my hand and patted it. Time turned into wrinkles and climbed up her face and hands. I can't even remember from which day Mom and old age were linked. After all, in my memory, she was still the pretty girl who would pick a wildflower and bring it home on the way to pick me up from school. She spoke softly. My son has grown up and is very outstanding. Mom is not worried at all that you will turn bad. Whether it is your own life or feelings, Mom believes that you will make your own decisions. As a parent, what you have to do is to stand behind your children and support all their decisions, right? His expression was gentle and I blinked, trying hard not to let the tears fall. It turned out that they knew everything, knew that I had suffered emotional misfortune, but Lu Rian was Lu Rian and Shin Yue was Shin Yue, but they chose not to speak and chose not to ask. Even though they didn't know the specific story that happened in the middle, they were willing to cooperate to finish this incomplete play. My dad stood behind him and coughed lightly. Okay, why are you telling him these things? Let's go. The car is already downstairs in the hotel. My mom smiled and patted me on the back of my hand at last. Don't follow me downstairs. Take care of yourself, okay? I nodded vigorously, as if to repay all the times I felt my mother's admonitions and nagging apologies when I was a child. Watching their backs go away, I closed the door and lay on my back on the bed in the hotel. The ceiling was gray and dark. Jing Wennin's phone popped up several messages, all of which were sent by Lu Rian from last night to now. I called you for not going home last night. How are your uncle and aunt? I will definitely accompany you for dinner and make up for my mistake. Gu Wian had a car accident last night. He has no friends in this city except me. I really can't do anything. Gu Wian is Wang de Shanjing will Hui Zhi de English. Gu Wian. When I saw this name I pressed the black screen button. I looked at the ceiling and remembered my mother's smiling face when she said she supported all their decisions. At that moment, a strong sense of guilt burst out from the bottom of my heart. I always felt that as long as I didn't regret my life, I could live any way I wanted. I loved Lu Rian, so I tried to use 3 years to warm her heart. It was my own decision, so as long as I could be responsible for myself, anything was fine. But now I suddenly felt that I couldn't do that anymore. A person's life is not fragile and can't be supported by just one person. If my mother knew what happened to me, she would be sad, right? My mother would be sad. Just thinking about it, the guilt almost drilled my heart. I took a deep breath and sat up, turning on my phone again. The screen was still on the page of the conversation with Lu Rian. I took a deep breath, bit my lower lip tightly, and my fingertips flew across the screen. A message was sent successfully, and the green the first wrote in the dialogue box, "Let's break up." I went back to pack my things on a sunny afternoon. Lu Rian was not at home. The whole house was a mess, cigarette butts were thrown on the ground at random, and the windows were closed. As soon as I stepped into the door, I could still smell a strong smell of cigarettes. It seemed that she had not been doing well in the past 2 days. During this period of time, he persisted in calling and texting me, and he became the one who kept pestering me. Now, I finally understand his state of mind at that time. It turns out that being disturbed by someone you don't like is really a very distressing thing. I frowned and looked for a foothold on the dirty and messy floor where there were sundries. I pulled the suitcase into the bedroom and swept the clothes in the closet into the suitcase. I had very few things, even though I had lived in this house for several years. Apart from clothes and a few pairs of shoes, there was nothing else I needed to take away. I stood at the end of the bed and looked around. Even though I hadn't been back for only 2 days, I felt a sense of strangeness, as if I had never belonged. It's the same as here. In fact, I don't belong here. The black pillow on the sofa was picked by him when he went shopping together, one of the few times we went shopping. At that time I fell in love with a brown bear-shaped pillow, but Lu Rian said that the style didn't match the decoration of our house. She took the pillow out of the shopping cart and threw in a black one, as well as the Disney doll. On our second anniversary last year, I begged Lu Rian for a long time before she finally nodded and agreed to accompany me to Disneyland. It was on the day of departure that the company called her back. I went to Disneyland alone that time. Even though I was a little sad, I hid my emotions very well. Later, when I went home and held the doll in front of Lu Rian like a treasure, he glanced at me and said, "You are so grown up, are you childish?" A feeling of grievance surged in my heart, and I hid the doll in the deepest part of the closet. Until today it has been brought back to me. I just turned it over. Everything in this house is silently describing my pain. Now I am finally leaving. I took a last look at the room, stepped out and closed the door. At the same time, the sound of the password lock opening rang out. I was stunned and looked up to meet Lu Rian's eyes. She looked much thinner. Seeing me, a trace of tension appeared on Lu Rian's face. Boda shouted. I held the handle of the suitcase tightly and pressed it lightly. Lu Rian walked in and saw my suitcase at a glance. A painful expression appeared on her face. "Do you have to go? Do you have to break up with me?" Before I could say anything, he said that I was wrong about what happened that day. Boda, I was really wrong. I have heard him apologize countless times. If there is still room for retention, I will not pull this suitcase and stand here now. I interrupted him, and my words showed the determination that I don't want to have anything to do with him anymore. I said to Lu Rian, "It's useless. I'm really tired. You can even fall in love again with someone you don't love. But what should you do if you are tired?" I looked at him as if I was looking at a test paper that was 1 point short of passing. The feeling of exhaustion swept over my body, and I really didn't have the courage to do it again. Lu Rian looked at me as if she was looking at a stranger she had never met. I understood how she felt. After all, in the past, I would never have said such words, and she would never have thought that I would actually have the courage to leave her. Lu Rian smiled bitterly. She looked at me as if her eyes were looking through me, as if she was remembering something. She said, "I used to think I didn't love you." I slowly raised my head and looked at her. Until that day when I came back from the hospital and saw the dark room. I suddenly thought maybe we could get a dog together so that you wouldn't be too scared at night. But I turned on the lights only to find that you hadn't come back at all. Lu Rian's eyes were focused on my face again. I asked if I realized it too late. I looked at her with mixed feelings. What should I say? It's like you, as an adult, finally got your favorite lollipop from childhood, and you no longer like candy after growing up. I took a deep breath and slowly uttered a single syllable. It's a new house, rented near the company. On the way to move, I was holding a box and walking on the cobblestone path in the community. I unexpectedly saw a familiar figure, Shen Yue, wearing a set of white sweatpants, holding a golden retriever, walking slowly. When I saw her, she also saw me. Shen Yue took off her headphones with a look of surprise on her face. After taking a few quick steps, she walked to me and said, "You're moving." I nodded and Shen Yue also nodded. Then, his eyes stayed on the huge box in my hand. He naturally reached out and took the golden retriever. As if he felt ignored, he cried out. Shen Yue tilted her head slightly and introduced the meat floss. I leaned down, stretched out my hand and greeted me seriously. "Hello." Arousong looks like his name. The golden retriever looked at my palm, tilted his head and looked quite confused. Shen Yue coughed lightly. "He hasn't learned to shake hands yet." I said, "Oh, twice." Shen Yue asked where she lived. "Building 5, floor 8. Shen Yue raised her eyebrows and said, "I'm just downstairs from you." I widened my eyes. Is this a coincidence? As we chatted, we unknowingly walked to the bottom of the armed forces. The golden retriever looked very excited. He rushed forward all of a sudden, pulling Shen Yue to stagger forward. I quickly supported him. Shen Yue used the force to stand up straight. I don't know if it was my illusion, but his face seemed to turn a little red. The elevator door opened and went upstairs. Standing at the door, Shen Yue put down the box and sent it here. I have to go back. Raozong hasn't eaten yet. I took out the key to open the door, turned around and said okay, but who knew that as soon as the door opened, the golden retriever suddenly rushed in, shaking his 2 big ears, looking happy and thoughtless. Raozong and Shen Yue stood outside and shouted. But the golden retriever didn't know why is he so excited? He ignores me no matter how I call him. Shen Yue scratched the back of his head awkwardly, as if she saw her disobedient child. I looked at his face and burst out laughing without expecting anything. Then I slightly turned sideways to make way for half of the door and said, "Come in and have a seat." I handed Shen Yue a cup of coffee and sat down on the sofa. "I haven't asked you yet, what job do you do now?" Shen Yue buried her face in the cup, took a sip of coffee and then slowly said, "After returning from abroad, you were in a band for 2 years. Later the band disbanded, and you started your own business." I said with an amateur look. It seems that the Mercedes-Benz was bought by Boss Shen himself. Shen Yu squinted his eyes slightly, with an unfathomable look on his face. Finally, he said slowly, "That's not the case. It's my father's." Before I could reply, I heard him continue. "But there is a Porsche that I bought myself." I widened my eyes and almost choked on a sip of coffee. "You deliberately gasped." Shen Yu smiled and raised one eyebrow. "Isn't this one to suppress first and then praise?" He asked again. "What about you?" The golden retriever was probably tired from running around the house, and lay down at Shen Yue's feet, his eyes gurgling at me. I smiled. "I'm doing design in the office building next to this community, but I have applied for a transfer to the headquarters next year." Shen Yue was stunned, and asked a question that seemed nonsensical, but closely related to what I said. "Broke up with your girlfriend?" I looked at her, then smiled and nodded slowly. Shen Yue looked at me, hesitant to speak. "It's okay, I've been in this city for so many years, it's time to change places." Shen Yue nodded. "When you leave, remember to tell me, I can see you off." I also smiled and agreed. A few days after moving, I received a text message from an unfamiliar number. "Tomorrow at 2 p.m. in the coffee shop on Renmin Road." I looked at the message and had a vague guess in my heart who sent it. After thinking it over, I decided to keep the appointment. It rained a little in the afternoon. It was raining and there was water on the street. After getting off the taxi, I accidentally stepped into a puddle, leaving water stains on my trouser legs. Perhaps it was because of the rainy day. There were few people in the coffee shop. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Gu Wuyan sitting by the French window. The person who made Lu Ruyan miss him all these years must have a good appearance. When she was in school, she was like a gardenia, with a strong fragrance, lingering among the crowd and leaving an irresistible fragrance. Today she put on makeup, but it still couldn't cover up her fatigue. I pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down. "What did Mr. Gu want to talk to me about?" Wuyan's eyes stared straight at me, as if he wanted to see something from it. "He said that Lu Ruyan and I were getting married and came to tell you." After that, he leaned back in the chair and looked at me with a contemptuous attitude. I smiled slightly and held out my hand for the invitation. Gu Wuyan's eyes fell on my palm and froze for a moment. My smile became a little stronger and I withdrew my hand. "You can't take it out, right?" The smile on Gu Wuyan's face disappeared. He remained silent and didn't say anything. I continued, "If Lu Ruyan was really ready to marry you, you wouldn't need to pretend to be arrogant in front of me and declare your sovereignty. Gu Wuyan is you. You found that your position in Lu Ruyan's heart is not as good as before, right?" After hearing this, Gu Wuyan's face showed a painful expression, and then turned into fierceness. "Did you say something in front of him?" "Lu Ruyan waited for me for 3 years, and now I'm back. Why doesn't he even want to see me?" I was stunned. I thought Lu Ruyan's feelings for Gu Wuyan would be simple, but I didn't expect him to do this. "After you broke up, Lu Ruyan started to drink to relieve her sorrow. I thought this was the best time for us to get back together, but Gu Wuyan closed his eyes in pain, but he said that he regretted not being clean with me at the beginning." After hearing his words, I didn't even know for a moment what should I say. Human feelings are really strange things. They come and go quickly. The person I once called my lover can be abandoned the next moment, and the ex who was abandoned like a shoe has become my sweetheart. Now the only thing I am thankful for is that I have escaped from this vortex. I paused and finally said that it was your love story. It had nothing to do with me and I was not interested. After that, I stood up and walked past Gu Wuyan wanting to leave. I know best what a man who is crazy about love looks like because I used to be like that, so I hate it now. When I see such people, I am afraid to see my own shadow in them, and then fall into endless pain. Who knew that the next second, Gu Wuyan also hurriedly stood up and called me. "Ji Boda, I beg you, please give Lu Ruyan back to me, okay? I can't live without her. I really can't live without her." "Hey, since you treated the other person as your property from the beginning, why do you still?" After leaving, I didn't care about her for 3 years. I didn't cherish her when I had her, and only tried to keep her unwillingly after I lost her. I looked back at Gu Wuyan, who was already crying, and a trace of smoke appeared in his eyes. He and Lu Ruyan were the same kind of people, not worthy of sympathy. During the Chinese New Year, I went back home, and my parents saw that I came back alone. They said nothing but just asked me cheerfully how my life was going recently. I said that everything was fine with me, that I had moved closer to the company, and that the company's notice had come down. After working for about another 6 months, I would be promoted and transferred to the headquarters. It was at this time that I suddenly remembered that Lu Ruyan and I lived in that community only because it was close to her workplace, and that I could have been transferred a long time ago. But in order not to be separated from Lu Ruyan, I secretly refused several times. It was me who had been accommodating her, and it was me who had been letting myself down. Now, I finally have only myself in my eyes and heart. When my father heard that I was promoted, he was very happy. He left. I drank a bottle of wine that had been hidden for several years, and my face turned red from drinking it. My mother held my hand and repeatedly reminded me to be careful when I was alone outside. I also said yes repeatedly. I recovered from the relaxed atmosphere of the new year and devoted myself to work again. Without the emotional ties, I felt that my life was much happier. I got up on time, ate what I wanted for breakfast, lived in a room decorated in my favorite style, and occasionally picked a few movies to watch on the projection. But I would often meet Shen Yue. Sometimes she appeared in the elevator, sometimes on the only way to the community, and sometimes even in the supermarket. She appeared too frequently, so frequently that even a slow-witted person like me could see the clues. Once again, when I met Shen Yue walking her dog on the park road, I smiled and told her that I had talked to Teacher Lu on the phone 2 days ago. He said that after graduation you specifically asked him where I was going. Shen Yue tilted her head to one side and didn't speak, but her index finger was wrapped around the dog leash, winding around it. Rao Rao's entire index finger was wrapped with rope, and then it was released. I continued to ask Shen Yue, "Did you like me back then?" The love of an adult is frank enough, without the shyness and stumbling of youth. She snorted softly, then looked at me, as if waiting for my reply. Shen Yue behaved too naturally. If it weren't for her slightly red ears, I would even think that this was just an ordinary chat. I asked Shen Yue, maybe everyone would ask such a question when they receive love. Why did Shen Yue say I don't know why? Maybe when I realized it I already liked you. Maybe I realized it when Louis gave you a love letter that year. Or maybe I realized it when you fell to your side. I could laugh at you but didn't want others to laugh at you. He looked into my eyes with a soft expression. After graduation I thought I would never see you again, but I didn't expect that when I saw you again, you already had a girlfriend. That I have always been unable to bear such affectionate scenes, nor such affectionate eyes. It was obviously me who started it, but now I am avoiding his gaze. I said in a sniper tone, you really have been planning this for a long time. Shen Yue sighed, not really. After all, the whole world can see it, except you. I looked away to remind you. Shen Yue smiled, his breath warm. Just thank you for meeting his meaningful eyes. I'm sorry, I'm leaving this city next year, so the love of adults is frank enough, and the rejection of adults is also present enough. Actually, it's not that I don't like you or that I don't have a good impression of you. It's just that the reality makes it impossible for love to be as pure and full as it was on campus. So I won't say like I did at graduation, can you wait for me? Nor will I say, maybe you can come to my city and we can be together. We have all grown up and understand that in a long life, love is just one of the paths, not the only one and not important. Even without this path, life can go on. Shen Yue lowered his eyes and looked at me, with his eyelashes drooping, so that I couldn't see through what he was thinking. After a while I heard him say, I know. Time passed aimlessly for another half a year, and when spring came and flowers bloomed, I started to pack my luggage, and all the furniture in the house was disposed of. Everything became the same as the day I first moved in. Shen Yue took Raozong to visit again. Maybe dogs really have spirituality. Raozong looked at the empty room, and his originally excited face suddenly wilted. It bit my trouser waistband and made a whining sound. I squatted down and touched its head. I will be back in a year. Shen Yue raised her eyebrows when she heard this. You will be gone for a year. I nodded and asked in return. Fallen leaves return to their roots. I have to go back to Jiangcheng. Am I going to stay there forever? Shen Yue let out a long oh, and then said with a melancholy face, then I'll be with Raozong and wait for you to come back. I looked at her face and said unhappily, why are you waiting for me? Live your own life. Shen Yue spread her hands, shrugged, and then showed a more serious expression. Take care of yourself and keep in touch. I chuckled. Why do you talk like my mother? It was a very sunny day with light clouds and a gentle breeze. The wheels of the suitcase rolled across the ground of the airport. The air conditioning blew on people's skin, making them feel slightly cold. I sat on the plane and looked at the soft clouds were floating around me, and I was thinking about the last words Shen Yue said to me at the airport. He gestured with his hands at an altitude of 8,000 meters. I'll take you there. When you come back, I'll wait for you here too. Are you waiting for me? The coldness of the glass in the cabin spread from my fingers to my heart. I shook my head and decided to forget it. This year, I was so busy that I couldn't tell the difference between day and night. Only occasionally when I was free, I would hear some news about other people, such as a junior high school classmate getting married, a college classmate having a child, and another example, Gu Wuyan finally chose to go abroad again. As for Lu Ruyan, perhaps his name was a respectful term for me in the past, but as time passed, someone finally mentioned it in front of me. There was once a friend from college who somehow guessed that Lu Ruyan and I were together. After we broke up, he called me and the first sentence he said was that you and Lu Ruyan broke up. I was stunned and subconsciously wanted to deny it, but then I thought since we broke up, there is no need to abide by Lu Ruyan's agreement that she didn't want to make public. So I asked what happened and the person on the other end of the phone hesitated, asking, do you know what Lu Ruyan has become now? I didn't say a word. Cui Xin, did I harm her, or was it she who hurt me? But I couldn't save her. People who had finally gotten out of the quagmire were unwilling to go back into it. I said, apologize to him for me. I wish him happiness in the future. The tone was unexpected, and it seemed that even the fingertips were frosted. The other party wanted to say something else, but I hung up the phone. I turned my head and looked out the huge French window of the apartment. The sky was gray. It was going to rain, but after the rain it would be sunny, and everything would slowly get better when it was sunny. I reached out and I touched my face and unexpectedly felt a wet area. I haven't seen you for a year. Look how thin you have become. My son is back. Old man, come and see him. My mother was wearing an apron and holding a spatula in her hand. In order to prevent them from running all the way to the airport to pick me up, I only said that I would be home in the near future, but did not say when. Similarly, I did not tell anyone about my return date, including Shen Yue. I didn't know what I was afraid of in my heart. I was afraid that she really kept her promise, and I was even more afraid that it was just a joke he said casually, so I just ran away. My father looked energetic. When I went out, I was holding a cat in my arms. When we had a video call, they told me that this was a stray cat in the community. It looked pitiful, so they took it home to raise it. The little guy grew from skinny to fat and strong at a speed visible to the naked eye. The little orange cat became a little orange pig. My mother could hardly hold it anymore, but my father was still hugging it all day long. Why didn't you tell me in advance when you were coming back? I could have made you a good meal at noon. I shook my head. I didn't tell you just to avoid troubling you. My father put the cat down, picked up the suitcase and dragged it into the house, then turned to my mother and said, she said you should make a phone call and ask your aunt to come home for dinner. I was stunned. What aunt? My mother walked towards the kitchen with a spatula. probably thinking of the food in the pot that was about to burn. Her tone was a little anxious. It was Shen Yue. Didn't we have dinner together? He came to our house every day during the big and small festivals of this year. He said that he was doing filial piety for you when you were not here. Now that you are back, shouldn't we invite your aunt to dinner? I leaned against the door frame of the kitchen, listening to my mother's tone as if coaxing a child, and couldn't help laughing. If you want to invite, just do it. It's just a meal. Mom clicked her tongue twice. His expression looked very dissatisfied. Child, do you really not understand, or are you pretending not to understand? Let me tell you, over the past year, I have treated my young aunt as my daughter-in-law. She is fair, beautiful, and good at speaking. The topic at hand was about to change, and I hurriedly called out to my mother. My mother glanced at me and said, Okay, let's not talk about it anymore. You young people should handle your own affairs. While we were talking, my father, who was already wearing reading glasses, looked up from his mobile phone and said, Xiaoshan said he would be here soon. I crossed my arms, feeling helpless on my face, but I couldn't help but feel nervous in my heart. Over the past year, I and Shen Yue, we have always kept in touch. He would tell me about interesting things in life, and I would share my troubles at work. Sometimes I would think that we were really like Shen Jiai and Ke Jingteng, who kept in touch after graduation. Thinking of this, I would inexplicably close the conversation window where I wanted to send a message. The doorbell rang, and my father pushed me and signaled me with his eyes to stand up. I walked to the door and gently opened it. Shen Yue was wearing a white dress and looked very refreshing. Her eyes were bright. Long time no see. I said it was only 1 year. It's not long, but Shen Yue said that for me, it's been long enough. People who have never been loved well, the first reaction after receiving love is to escape. I turned my head away and said, Come in, my parents are waiting for you. The food was already on the table. My mother was more enthusiastic to see Shen Yue than to see me. She kept saying, Xiaoshan, eat more. In the middle of the meal, Shen Yue went out to answer a phone call. My mother picked up her coat that was draped over the back of the chair, pouted her chin and said to me, Send it to the person, don't catch a cold. I had no choice but to go to the balcony and saw Shen Yue saying something with her back to me. She was too far away. I only vaguely heard a few words, a blind date and going home for the new year. My heart skipped a beat, but I still called out his name. Shen Yue turned around and saw me not far away. There was nothing unusual in her expression. Looking at that face, I was inexplicably angry. I threw the coat in my hand into his arms and turned away. After a while, Shen Yue returned to the dinner table and poked me with her elbow. What's wrong with you? I stuffed a mouthful of rice into my mouth. It's okay, it's really okay. It's really okay. After dinner, my mother asked me to send her off. I haven't seen Shen Yue for a year. She seems to have lost some weight, and her jawline is more obvious. I put my hands in my coat pockets and turned around. I haven't been back for a year. Jiangxing has changed a lot. I nodded and said yes. There are tall buildings everywhere, growing faster than us. The distance between buildings is getting closer, but the distance between people is getting farther and farther. I suddenly asked without hesitation, when do you plan to go home this year? Shen Yue was stunned. It's too early to say this now. Then there was a smile in his tone. It was my mother who said that if I don't bring my boyfriend back this year, I shouldn't go back either. Now it was my turn to be stunned. I stopped and asked without thinking, didn't your mother ask you to go home for a blind date? No. Shen Yue's legs are long. In the few seconds when I stopped, he was already some distance away from me. He suddenly turned around with a dull expression. He said, a few waves of fight, so were you jealous just now? I looked at his face and sighed silently. It seemed that I could not escape it, so I nodded and pretended to be calm. Shen Yue froze. He slowly raised his right hand and touched his neck. Shen Yue also loved to do this action many years ago. When he couldn't do a math problem when he dozed off in class and was suddenly called by the teacher, I knew that it was a sign that he was too confused to know how to react. I sighed again and I thought, Shen Yue, this idiot is obviously very smart, why does he look so stupid sometimes? I took a few steps forward, grabbed the edge of the zipper of his open coat with both hands, then leaned over and kissed him, just a light touch. When I stood back in place again, Shen Yue still maintained the action of touching his neck with his right hand. For 1 second. 2 seconds, Shen Yue suddenly cursed in a low voice, then subconsciously took a few steps back with an unbelievable look on her face. Ji Boda, you sneak attacked me. I looked at him with amusement and suddenly, a flash of thought in my mind was caught. I said, Shen Yue, you haven't been in a relationship in the past few years. Shen Yue opened her mouth and closed it again. He wrapped his coat around his body, like a good man who had been violated, and then said in a calm tone that could be exposed at a glance, I'm leaving, I'll hold your hand. Okay, I'm really leaving. I stretched out my hand and made a gesture of invitation. Shen Yue looked at me at first glance. There seemed to be a hint of resentment in his eyes. I watched him walk out of the gate of the community, and then I turned around and walked towards the house. Just as I was about to step onto the stairs, a hand suddenly appeared and grabbed me, causing me to fall backwards with an unstable center of gravity, and fall into a warm embrace. Shen Yue should have run back, still breathing slightly. She twisted my body and said that she had just thought about it, and felt that it would be easier for girls to take the initiative in this kind of thing. Then I saw an enlarged face. I think I should be smiling at this moment with gentle eyes, and I think Shen Yue must be too. Suddenly I remembered a lot of things. Years ago, when I confessed my love to Lu Ruyan for the first time, I asked her cautiously if she could be with me. She just glanced at me and said yes. At that time I took 99 steps just for the step taken by Lu Ruyan. A truly healthy love should not be like this. Shen Yue took 50 steps towards me, and I should also take 50 steps towards her. Only when we run towards each other can we be in love. Otherwise, how can we stand in the center of the world and hug each other? Let's go home to see my parents at the end of the year and get married in the spring of next year, okay? You are too anxious. I have been waiting for so many years. I want to fast forward the ending. I haven't said I want to marry you yet. Who else but me? Raozong only recognizes you. Okay, for Raozong's sake, with a reluctant tone, he called Shen Yue again. Are you asking for a beating? The sunset falls, we wait for spring and winter snow, time carves scratches under the alternation of seasons. 17-year-old Jibota could not have imagined that in the future, after going around in circles, he would marry the girl who was like moonlight, but 17-year-old Shen Yue thought that he had always wanted that. The summer in Jiangqing never stops, the heat waves roll in, blowing in your face. Sometimes you love someone. Two people living on the same street may not see each other. When you don't love, that person's current situation is like a heat wave suddenly hit you, catch you off guard. But the air conditioning in the living room is turned on full. I lie on the side of the sofa to watch, my legs across the legs of the sitting Shen Yue. A photo suddenly appeared in the circle of friends. I can't help but be stunned. It's the back of a couple of newlyweds. Even if it's a little blurry, but I still recognized it at a glance, and the person who sent this photo is the one who called me before, a mutual friend of Lu Ruyan, and I got married a few years ago. The wedding was grand, and almost everyone I knew was invited. It was Shen Yue who took the initiative to ask me if I wanted to invite Lu Ruyan. I looked at her face, smiled gently, and then refused. Her generosity was not because she was generous enough, but because she loved me enough, and my choice of course could not disappoint her. Shen Yue looked at me, still stubborn, and really didn't invite her. I shook my head and looked at her with some amusement, afraid that you would drown the entire wedding scene with jealousy. Lu Ruyan had looked for me in the past few years, and tried all kinds of methods, both soft and hard, until I couldn't bear it anymore and invited her. I blocked and deleted all the contact information of Shen Yue. I didn't mean to hide it from Shen Yue, but I was afraid that if he found out, the situation would become worse, so I took the initiative to explain to him every time. Shen Yue would not be angry with me, but he would be sulking on his own, and his teeth were itching with anger. Late at night on our wedding day, I received a message from an unfamiliar number with only 4 words, "Happy Wedding." I knew who sent it, and I thought he should also know that I would guess it, so I saved it privately and sent him the wedding photos I had just taken 2 days ago. I said I was very happy and then blocked it. I opened my eyes full of festive red, and then turned my head and rolled my eyes at him. I said, "We are married, and you still ask such a stupid question." Shen Yue was not annoyed. She turned over and hugged me in her arms. "Yes, you are my husband now. You must like me. It's great that you like me." His corny words gave me goosebumps on my arms. I raised my head with difficulty, but saw that Shen Yue had closed her eyes with a smile on her lips. With a smile on my face, I didn't say anything in the end. I adjusted a comfortable posture and fell asleep. Before falling asleep, the last sentence I thought of was, "Yes, it's great, Shen Yue, it's you in the end." Since that day, Lu Ruyan has not appeared in front of me until today, when I saw the photos of her wedding. I scrolled down and saw several more. Just like I didn't invite her that year, he didn't invite me either. I think he knew that I wouldn't go. The groom was not Gu Wuyan, and the boy didn't look like me, nor like Gu Wuyan. He looked very handsome. I heard that they met through a blind date and got married 3 months later. As for Lu Ruyan, he looked quite different from what I remembered. I thought hard for a long time but couldn't describe the difference. Later I thought maybe I didn't love him anymore, so even my memory couldn't beautify the person in front of me. Sometimes I sighed at fate. Gu Wuyan's 4 years and my 3 years didn't bring us any results. And every time this happened, I would see Shen Yue, who was drowsy with a messy head and was cooking for me in the kitchen. Then I found that I had no regrets at all. My life ordinary but not boring. Every day revolves around work and family. There was a period of time when Raozong was particularly excited. He would run out as soon as the door opened, and Shen Yue couldn't stop him. It was not until I saw the little golden retriever playing on the grass that I realized that Raozong had also met his love. Shen Yue always supported this and had an attitude of free love. Sometimes she would proudly look at Raozong's running figure and say that he didn't look loyal, so it's up to me. At this time I would look at him helplessly, and I really couldn't understand where his pride came from. When Shen Yue was not too busy at work, she would pull Raozong. I went to the bar where we met to perform. Her peach blossom eyes were deep and beautiful, and the dim light gave her a sense of alienation, which made many young men laugh. But after singing a song, she would walk straight to me, take my hand without hesitation and say, "Let's go, husband, let's go home." Sometimes when we met people who didn't know the truth and asked us if we were a couple in love, Shen Yue would show off the ring on her ring finger like showing off a treasure, saying, "We are already married," instead of being proud like she won the championship in the singing competition in high school. As for Shen Yue's parents, I once worried that they would not like me, but later it turned out that I was overthinking. Shen Yue's father could be said to be a bit serious, but his mother was well-maintained and open-minded, as if she was just a sister a few years older than me. They never interfered between Shen Yue and me. They seemed to care more about maintaining their own feelings than their daughter's feelings. Sometimes I heard Shen Yue making a phone call with a helpless tone saying, "Why are you pushing the company's affairs to me again? You want to go out with your wife and I want to too." I leaned over and saw the words "Old Shun" on the call screen. I couldn't help but glare at him. In return, Shen Yue looked aggrieved, as if she was complaining to me. "Don't you think so?" I looked at the screen that was still on the call. My face suddenly turned red, and I reached out to cover her mouth. Some time ago, Shen Yue and I went back to his house for dinner. His mother happily pulled me and praised me for looking more handsome than the last time we met. His father was probably not good at speaking, and the last way he was shown to express his love was to give him money. However, when I saw the bank card he handed over, I was still at a loss, and cast my eyes on Shen Yue for help. Shen Yue went to pick it up at the place where she lived. He took the card and put it next to me. The old man must have given me a lot, and of course I couldn't avoid being glared at by his father. His father looked at Shen Yue and asked if she was still living in the house in the West Courtyard. The West Courtyard was where I lived before I went on a business trip, and it was also there that I met Shen Yue from the same community. I was stunned and subconsciously asked what the West Courtyard was. When his father saw that it was me who spoke, his tone softened a little. He said that I didn't know what had happened to Yue before. She didn't live at home and had to rent a house outside. He wanted to continue but was stopped by Shen Yue in a hurry. Shen Yue looked at me one glance. I stuttered when I spoke. There was a soup in the kitchen. I went to bring it over. I looked at his back, silently stood up and walked over. Shen Yue saw that I was so flustered, and lowered her head to admit her mistake, looking like Ro Floss. I didn't hide it from you on purpose. I was afraid that you would be angry. I was afraid that you would think that your meeting me was not accidental. His voice stopped abruptly, because the next second I took a few steps forward and hugged her. I'm not angry. Someone took great pains to love me. Why should I be angry? I raised my head and looked into his eyes. Shen Yue, I love you. The whole text is over. Remember to like and follow.